Once upon a time, nestled in a peaceful, sun-drenched village, lived a kind old woman. She didn't have much in the way of worldly possessions, but her heart was full of love, especially for her one and only companion, a magnificent rooster she had raised from a tiny chick. This wasn't just any rooster. He was her alarm clock, her confidant, and her shadow. Every single morning, without fail, his proud crow would slice through the dawn, a cheerful signal for the old woman to start her day. As she tended her small garden, he would strut beside her, pecking at stray seeds and offering quiet companionship. He was the bright spot in her simple, solitary life. One afternoon, a royal proclamation echoed through the village square, carried by the king's herald. The king, desperate and heartbroken, declared a grand challenge. His daughter, the princess, was shrouded in a deep and mysterious sadness. She hadn't smiled, not even once, since she was a little girl. Countless wealthy princes and dashing nobles had paraded before her, armed with jokes, exotic gifts, and grand performances, but none could break the spell of her melancholy. The reward for succeeding was immense: half the kingdom and the princess's hand in marriage. Back in her humble cottage, the old woman heard the news and let out a long, weary sigh. She looked at her reflection in a pail of water, seeing the lines of a long, hard life etched on her face. "Oh my," she whispered to her rooster, who was preening his feathers nearby. "If only I had a special gift, a magical trinket, or a funny talent. Perhaps I could bring a flicker of joy to that poor princess's face." She patted the rooster's head, her heart aching for the young royal she had never met. To her utter astonishment, the rooster stopped preening. He puffed out his chest, flapped his glossy wings with determination, and spoke in a clear, confident voice. "Mother," he said, his bright eyes locking onto hers, "don't you worry. Let me go to the palace. Let me try. Perhaps, just perhaps, a simple rooster is exactly what the princess needs to see. Maybe I can be the one to make her smile." The old woman stared, her mouth agape for a moment, before a gentle, disbelieving laugh escaped her lips. A talking rooster? Well, she had seen stranger things in her long life. "Oh, you brave, silly boy," she chuckled, stroking his comb. "All right, if your heart is set on it, then go. Go and try your best." And so, with a proud crow and a final, affectionate nod to the old woman, the rooster set off on the long road to the royal palace. The path was dusty and winding, leading him through ancient forests and across babbling brooks. He strutted with a purpose that belied his small stature, his spirit full of hope. As he journeyed through a particularly dense part of the woods, he came across an old traveler resting by the side of the road, looking weary and frail. Without a second thought, the rooster stopped. He found a small spring and guided the traveler to it for a drink, sharing a few wild berries he had found along the way. He listened patiently as the traveler spoke of a long and tiring journey. This traveler, however, was no ordinary person. She was a magical fairy in disguise, testing the hearts of those who passed by. Touched by the rooster's selfless kindness and impressed by his bold quest, she decided to reveal her true form. A soft, shimmering light enveloped her, and the frail old traveler transformed into a radiant being with wings like spun moonlight. "Brave rooster," the fairy said, her voice like wind chimes, "your heart is as pure and golden as your feathers. Such courage and kindness should not go unrewarded. I will give you a gift to aid you on your quest." She reached out and gently touched the rooster's head with a glittering finger. In a flash of brilliant, warm light, an incredible transformation occurred. The rooster's feathers melted away, reforming into a magnificent suit of golden armor that shimmered like the rising sun. His small, feathered body grew tall and strong, his wings becoming powerful arms, and his head taking the shape of a handsome young man with a kind smile and eyes that sparkled with the same cleverness he'd had as a rooster. The fairy smiled at her creation. "Go now," she urged. "Your spirit remains the same, and that is your greatest strength." And with a final benevolent nod, she vanished, leaving the newly formed prince standing alone in the sun-dappled forest. The young man, still getting used to his new form, continued his journey to the palace. When he arrived, the guards, initially stunned by his radiant appearance, quickly granted him an audience with the king. He was led into the grand throne room, where the princess sat beside her father, her beautiful face a mask of sorrow, her eyes empty and distant. The king looked at the stranger doubtfully. "Another one," he muttered under his breath. "What makes you think you can succeed where dukes and princes have failed?" Instead of boasting or performing elaborate tricks, the young man simply bowed respectfully and then turned to the princess. He looked at her not as a prize to be won, but as a person who was hurting. "Your Highness," he began, his voice warm and gentle. He didn't tell her jokes he'd rehearsed. Instead, he started telling her stories. He told her about life from a rooster's perspective. He described the thrill of crowing at the exact moment the sun peeked over the horizon, the comical squabbles with the other farm animals over the best worms, and the simple joy of feeling the sun warm his feathers after a cool night. He acted out how he would strut around the yard, puffing out his chest to impress the hens, and how he would hide from the old woman when it was time to be cooped up for the night. As he spoke, a small, curious light began to dawn in the princess's eyes. When he recounted a particularly funny story about accidentally chasing the village cat up a tree, a tiny twitch appeared at the corner of her mouth. He continued, his stories full of heart and humor, painting a vivid picture of a world so different from her own. Finally, when he described his valiant but clumsy attempt to fight off a fox that was twice his size, the princess couldn't hold it in any longer. A small giggle escaped her lips, then another. And then, for the first time in over a decade, a full, joyous, beautiful laugh filled the entire throne room. It was like the sun breaking through the clouds. The king leaped from his throne, his eyes wide with disbelief and overflowing with tears of joy. He rushed to the young man, clapping him on the back. "You've done it. You've broken the curse," he bellowed, his voice thick with emotion. True to his word, the king gave the young man half the kingdom. A grand wedding was held, and the rooster, who became a prince, married the princess who had finally found her smile. He ruled with the wisdom of a king and the humble heart of a rooster, beloved by his people for his kindness and good humor. But Prince Aurelius, as he came to be known, never forgot his origins. He never forgot the simple, loving home from which he came. His very first act as prince was to travel back to that peaceful village. He found the old woman still tending her garden, missing her beloved companion. When she saw the handsome prince approaching, she curtsied low, but he gently lifted her up. "Mother," he said, his smile as warm as ever. "It's me." The old woman's eyes filled with tears of wonder and joy as she recognized the spirit of her brave rooster. He brought her back to the palace, where she lived in comfort and happiness for the rest of her days, her heart full, surrounded by the love of her son, the prince, and her new daughter, the laughing princess, and they all lived happily ever after.